This is Bilbao. This is the meeting point. And this is Round the Table. Broadcasting not only to Bilbao, but around the world. Hello and welcome to Round the Table from the meeting point here in Bilbao. And in a packed programme today, we are talking about reading. We are talking about reading newspapers, different types of books, and we have a few useful tips for people taking exams. But first, here is the news. We've now finished the third trimester, so for the future programmes throughout this summer, we'll no longer be following the programme laid out in the book that we use in the classes. Instead, we'll be focusing more on aspects of learning English. So we've just held our final gathering of the year. We had our tortilla and beer party in the office to celebrate the end of term and possibly to celebrate the 4th of July, or maybe to celebrate some election results. But let's not talk about politics, let's talk about reading. What do you think the problems might be with people trying to read newspapers?
Well, I guess it might be a bit difficult for beginners at least, because maybe they play with words in the headlines to make people click.
Yeah.
Yes, a clickbait.
Yeah, they do. Apparently that's quite problematic. I've spoken to a lot of quite high-level learners who say it's impossible to understand headlines. But the actual content of the newspapers, either the real newspapers or online newspapers, because most people would be looking at the Guardian website, for example.
Yeah.
The advantages would be that everybody knows approximately what's happening in the news. Mm-hmm. So the content will be kind of familiar.
And I'm thinking about the Guardian, for example, which it's got lots of different sections. So you can choose something you like, for example, cinema or literature or science, and read things about that. Instead of reading the news, if you're not interested or whatever.
That's true, yes. Because as we've always said, if you're interested in something, it's much easier to learn. So if you're interested in cars, go to the motoring section.
Yeah, for example.
Because it's all English, isn't it?
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what you're reading. It's all the same grammatical structures will be there, whether you're reading about art or whether you're reading about cars or football.
Yeah, and if you like it, probably you talk about that more than anything else. So you want to learn all the vocabulary related to that topic anyway.
Yeah. And
so just go to that section.
Yeah, if it's interesting, you can learn.
Yeah.
Yes, so that's very important. Okay, so newspapers, they might have a limited use. What else is there I don't know if people know, but if you go to Wikipedia, down the side where it's got all the language selection, and you can choose what language to have it in, there is the simplified English.
Oh.
So sometimes you get an abbreviated version with all the complicated phrases taken out.
Oh, that's very good.
So yes, it's a bit more accessible. So that's an easier option.
I don't use Wikipedia anymore, do you?
Yeah, sometimes I do. Yeah, if I need a very quick summary of something, like somebody's life or something, like when you're looking at trying to find a bit of information on an actor on TV to see what else they've been in or something like that. Yeah. It's quite good, I think.
Yeah.
And then there are lots of other English language videos on YouTube. Of course, there are the meeting point English videos, which are
very good videos,
very high quality.
Yeah.
and the voiceover is very, very clear.
Very clear.
Yeah, I wonder who that wonderful person might be who does the voices. And the editing and the graphics are just such high quality. Anyway, so yes, we're going to try and put in a few more story type things, aren't we?
Yeah,
I'm going through lots of grammar at the moment, putting lots of grammar videos, which are going up on Wednesdays. Wednesdays I put the grammar videos. Sundays we'll have the podcast, and we'll try to do more short stories in the future.
Yeah, very short stories.
I was going to say a few words about practicing for exams, for those people that are going to do Cambridge exams. Always look at the time. Use of English and reading, I think they put it together into one paper.
Yeah.
But if you look at all the different exercises you have to do and the time that you have to do them in, I think each reading exercise is about 7 minutes, if I remember rightly. So you've got to get used to reading quickly and time yourself so you know how much time you will have in the real exam. And also, if there's multiple choice, always highlight in the text where the answers are, where you found your answer. And if you find out that your answer is wrong, if you can, go through these things in the class situation, ask your teacher. If your answer is B and the real answer is C, find out why the answer is C. But not only that, analyse why you chose the wrong answer, because those wrong answers are not put there at random. They are there because they are similar to something that it says in the text, and you'll need to analyse why you chose that and why those exam designers deliberately put that option there. Okay, so always analyse wrong answers. They're just as important as the correct answers.
Is it better to read the questions first? So when you read the text, you are kind of looking for the answers?
I think so, yeah. Some people say skim read first. Skim is the surface of something, yeah?
Yeah.
Skim, scum, they're all related to the top of liquids.
Yeah.
So to skim read is to read something really quickly, just to get the gist, as they call it, to get the gist, to get an approximate understanding of it, and then look at the questions and then go back through. But I'm not sure if you have time for that kind of thing. For me, I would look at the questions to know approximately what the question is, mark in the text where the paragraph where that answer is going to be. Normally they're in the correct order. The multiple choice questions come in the same order as they appear in the text. Also, sometimes if you've got 4 possible answers, sometimes you can eliminate 1 or 2. And then if you have to guess between whether it's B or C, at least you've got a 50-50 chance.
Yeah, I think normally is that 50-50 chance.
Yeah. But normally there's a very specific reason why they put that other answer there, and they know that some people are going to choose it because they didn't quite read everything thoroughly enough. And another thing, people tend to spend more time reading the text, but they don't spend much time reading the question. And sometimes at the question, there's a little catch in the question.
Maybe it's just a preposition that might confuse you or something.
I remember in there. Let's go on then to different types of books. So I think the key is to keep it simple. And don't read anything that's too complicated. So that's why those graded readers are very useful. Because you can select your level, which is not something you can do when you're watching a film. So you can choose the correct level, and don't worry about going to a level below what you think your level is. I think the most important thing is to try to read at a similar speed to how you read in your first language, which is impossible really, but if you're reading something simple that you can read fairly quickly and confidently, if there's a few new bits of vocabulary in there, there's not a problem. But the problem is if it's too complicated and you spend all your time looking in the dictionary and not actually reading the book.
Because then you are not really reading, are you?
And then once you've got to a decent speed at one level, then go up to the next level. But don't worry about reading something that's a bit simple. There's no harm in that. I've seen books quite often being in Bilbao. You can pick up a English book in a second-hand shop, and you can see where somebody's got a book that's far too complicated because the first 2-3 pages are full of notes where they've looked for every word in a dictionary, translations all scribbled in around the edges, and then by the second chapter suddenly the notes finish because somebody's only read the first chapter because it was too complicated. And there are some books, even if you read them in the full version, some books are going to be simpler than others. For example, Animal Farm I don't think was too complicated.
No.
Because I think George Orwell wrote it to be accessible. I think the idea was that children would be able to read it and understand it. Even though the theme behind the story is quite a complex political one.
Yeah.
The idea was that everybody could be able to read it and understand it, so that the style is not too complicated.
Yeah.
And also things like The Boy in the Striped Pyjamas, and what's the other one about the boy?
Basically, when the narrator is a child, like the dog in
The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Night, you're thinking of?
Yeah, that one.
Yeah. When the narrator is a child, yeah.
Because it's got the voice of a child, so the language is going to be very simple. And it's going to be easier to understand.
Yeah.
Even if the topic is a bit more complex, like you said, with the Animal Farm, but at least you know what the book is about.
Yeah, so when it's done in the voice of a child or a teenager, the range of vocabulary isn't the same.
Another one which is very good is the Color Purple.
Yeah.
Because it's also a child and it's letters. So the language is very simple and quite formal. So that's another good book to read.
Mm-hmm. Oh, another thing that I was looking at the other day, things to avoid would be things where there's a lot of dialogue and it's sort of colloquial dialogue.
Oh, yeah.
I was looking at Steinbeck,
Grapes
Grapes of Wrath.
Yeah.
And
Of Mice and Men as well, it's a bit difficult.
Yeah, because the conversations are written in the way they pronounce the words.
Yeah.
So it's really difficult to follow unless you understand that sort of Southern American accent.
Yeah.
By Southern American, I mean,
in the South.
Underneath Oklahoma. Down there, the south of North America, I'm thinking. Yeah, so that's something to avoid. So what about short stories then? You were going to say something about short stories?
Yeah, that's another thing you can read. Although some of them might be a bit difficult as well, because they have to say loads in less words. So sometimes they use very specific vocabulary.
Yeah.
So it's better to find short stories, like you say, kind of graded,
Yeah. But then if you've got a short story, like the Agatha Christie books that I got a few years ago, there was a book of 52 short stories, and some of those are like 3, 4, 5 pages.
Yeah.
And if you've got something that short, you can go in and do it quite intensively.
Yeah.
And even if there's a lot to look up, you can really study those 5 pages.
Yeah.
And then if there is complicated vocabulary, it's not going to be too problematic, 'cause it's not like you've got 300 pages to look at.
Maybe Agatha Christie is a good one to start with.
Yeah.
Because her stories are not too complex either.
No, her writing style is not complex.
Yeah.
No, the plot is quite interesting, but the style is not a very complicated one. And they don't drink as much tea in the books as they do in the films. These bilingual books. Now, I've only got one, and I bought it in the book fair in Bilbao, in Arenal, a few years ago. And it's in 2 languages. So on one side, you've got it in English, and the other side, you've got it in Spanish.
Yeah.
And the 2 pages correspond exactly. So you can see exactly, if you're reading a paragraph, and the word you don't understand is at the end of this paragraph, you can find exactly the same paragraph on the other side, on the opposite page. and find a translation. So that's another interesting option. Of course, I found the English and Spanish one in Bilbao, but I'm sure they exist in other countries. And another modern option is the e-book.
Oh, yeah.
Because with e-books, you've got a dictionary and you can just highlight the words and it tells you what it means.
Well, in fact, when I'm reading a book in English, I've already have the meaning of certain words. And you can choose if you want less or more vocabulary.
And I believe you can save words and put them in your own dictionary.
I guess.
Somebody told me you can build your own, you can put into a folder, you can put all the interesting vocabulary that you want to keep.
Yeah, I guess
and
you
build
can
up
do
your own dictionary.
Yeah.
So that's another interesting option. One thing you'll notice when you're reading fiction is that there's a lot of vocabulary to do with descriptions of things. If you're reading factual books, you don't have the same problem.
Yeah, I was thinking about that. Normally it's when you read fiction, isn't it? That you find lots of new vocabulary.
If you're reading factual books, you might find new vocabulary, but it'll be, well, the books that I was reading, it was like a type of vegetable or a type of metal or some specific tool that they used in the past.
Yeah.
But if you look for it, you find that same word keeps reappearing in the text because they keep talking about the same things.
Yeah.
So the same vocabulary comes around again and again. But if you're reading fiction and there's a word that's a descriptive word, you look in the dictionary, but that word probably never appears in the whole book.
Yeah. And you're not going to use it because they
Probably
use words
not.
that people don't use in the daily conversations.
Oh, yeah, that's another good point, yeah.
Like cry, for example, you always have this example, yeah?
Yeah, because there's weep and sob and blub as well. There's another crying verb, but there are 4 or 5 crying verbs, but in conversation we use one.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
So they might appear in fiction, but they're not really that useful for conversations. Yeah. How to deal with new vocabulary then? I think the first question is to say, do you really need to know what it is? Because you could find that you spend a lot of time looking in dictionaries, but sometimes you can just jump over the word, skip that word, and you can sort of understand more or less what the story's about without getting every single detail.
Yeah. I think you just have to try, because sometimes people, it's very difficult for them not to continue without going to the dictionary. But just do a couple of books without looking in the dictionary, and then you'll see that you can do it. Yeah,
I think sometimes people get a mental block. They see a word they don't understand, and then they think, well, I don't understand the sentence.
Yeah.
But if you continue, you know more or less what the sentence is about.
Yeah.
I think sometimes it might be, if there's a noun, for example, if somebody is looking for something, then maybe you need to know what that thing is he's looking for, because it's going to be important in the story.
Yeah.
And especially if it keeps reappearing, once you've seen the word a few times, you think, well, maybe I should know what this word means.
Yeah.
But quite often, if you only see the word once, it's probably not that integral to your understanding of the story.
Yeah.
Yeah, guessing words from the context. So sometimes you need to apply some kind of logic to see if you can work out what it is. Because normally you can see if it's an adjective or a verb or a noun. And then if it's a verb, say, what is it trying to express? What kind of thing could it be?
Yeah, I think that's better.
And there are lots of verbs that are verbs of walking and talking. So I got an example here. So if you see a sentence like this, the teacher stormed into the room and barked, "Everybody sit down and shut up." Okay, now most of that sentence people would understand, but you've got stormed into the room. So storm normally isn't a verb, but in this case storm is a verb, which probably you've never seen before. And bark, and if you've seen bark before, you think, well, normally it's the noise a dog makes.
Yeah.
So both of these from the context must be verbs. So if you think about words that you could replace these with. So if you wanted to make this a simpler sentence, you could say the teacher came into the room, the teacher walked into the room, and said or shouted. Okay, so both of those verbs, you can see that storm in this context is a way of going into a room, and bark is used as a way of speaking. So imagine a teacher coming into the room, and the thing he says is, everyone sit down and shut up. Okay, so this is a classroom full of young people who are behaving badly, probably. If they have to sit down and shut up, obviously they're being very noisy. They're standing on the tables and throwing bits of paper at each other, or whatever students do these days. If you work it out from the context, to storm into the room is to, like, you could say, burst into the room. To go into the room very quickly in an angry sort of way. And bark, yes, this is normally the noise a dog makes, but you can imagine it being applied to a voice. So it's like shouting. Shouting
so he's not
angrily.
very happy, is he?
He's not happy, no. He's an angry teacher. He stormed into the room and barked, everybody sit down and shut up. So there you go. By applying a little bit of logic, you can go past storm and bark, and you can see that one's a way of walking and one's a way of talking. What about this one? I've got another example here. He shrugged his shoulders and said, I don't know. And people look at this and they go, shrug. I've never seen shrug before. Well, you can see that it's a verb. You can see that it's a past tense because it's a regular verb. And so shrug. Everyone says, well, shrug, I don't know what that is. But it's something he does with his shoulders. And he says, I don't know. So if you say, I don't know, what do you do with your shoulders? There's not many things you can do with your shoulders.
Not really.
You go like that. You don't go like that.
Well, we can see, can we?
For those of you that can't see, I was doing a sort of Brazilian carnival dance. But that's not the kind of thing you do when you say, I don't know.
No.
So you've got to get it from the kind of context. So I think that's everything we've got to say about reading. Shall we have a quick game of... Okay, so let's have a game of what's the difference. So the first question we have here is, what is the difference between wounded and injured? Well, both are ways of being hurt, damaged, physically damaged. Wounded is normally during some sort of violence or conflict. So you're normally wounded with a gun or a knife. Military people get wounded. Injured is normally by accidents. So if you fall down the stairs, you're injured. And sports people have injuries.
And in a fight?
In a fight, you'd probably be wounded.
Okay.
So they're very similar. They're ways of being damaged in some way. So wounded is more violent and injured is more accidental. Now the next one on the list, this is a very difficult one. Shade and shadow.
Oh.
Shade and shadow.
That's a confusing one.
Yeah. Shade is where you go on a hot day.
Yeah.
So shadow is just that black shape on the floor where the sun
where you
doesn't,
go.
yeah, where the sun doesn't shine is a shadow. But if it's a really hot day and you need to avoid the sun, you go to the shade.
Yeah,
So-
you don't go to the shadow, do you?
No, you say shade. And it's just the same thing, but it's got a more positive view, I think. It's just the way you look at it. It's so
Can you
shade.
use shadow like of your own shape, for example? And for example, if you are thinking you go under the tree, is that the tree shadow?
Well, yeah, the tree has a shadow,
Yeah,
But if
yeah.
you're avoiding the sun, you would give it a different name.
Yeah.
That's all it is. It's
Yeah,
the same
yeah,
thing. It's just
yeah.
shade is a nice cool place to go on a hot day.
Yeah.
And also, do you know what shades are as a colloquial nickname for something? My shades. A pair of shades. Sunglasses.
Oh.
Sunglasses are sometimes called shades. For cool people. Okay, the next one to look at is lonely and alone.
That's a good one.
Again, it's actually physically it's the same thing, but it's how you interpret it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So-
if you are alone, you are with no one else. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
And
just
then-
one person, so that
Yeah.
person is alone.
Yeah. Whereas if you feel lonely.
Yeah, lonely is a feeling, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's a negative feeling that you have, a sort of sadness because
Yeah.
you are alone.
You might be with lots of people and feel lonely.
You could, yeah. Yeah, you could. It could just be a mental isolation rather than a physical isolation.
Yeah. I think
Yeah.
that's the difference, basically.
Yeah,
One
lonely.
is more physical. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Alone is physically one person with nobody else, and lonely is a feeling of being with nobody else.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. So yeah, you could be with lots of people and still feel lonely, or you could be alone and not feel lonely.
Yeah.
If you're happy being alone without anybody else,
Yeah.
sometimes people need a bit of privacy.
Yeah.
So yeah, lonely is the way of thinking, then the feeling. So now in the next one, we have 3 words that are kind of similar. We have terrific, terrible, and terrifying. Now these are often confused because it's one of those examples where a word that has the same origin, they've kind of separated over the years to become different things. So terrific now means really, really good. Like it's fantastic.
Yeah. When I first heard that, I was really confused.
Yeah.
Because I thought it had a negative
Yeah.
meaning.
Everybody
And it's
thinks terrific must be like
horrible.
Yeah. But really, terrible is really bad.
Yeah.
That-
like horrible.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
film was terrible.
Yeah.
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 And terrifying is very frightening.
Yeah. Yeah.
And terrific is really good.
Yeah.
So they've even though they all come from the same thing, they've changed their meaning over the years to be different things. Yeah, it's strange that terrific for being something really good. Because
Do you use it in British English or is it American?
that was terrific. Yeah, we say it. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And it's strange how it from something negative it became something very positive.
Yeah.
But lots of those words that mean really good have actually changed their meaning over the years. Like if you say fantastic, fantastic, we use it for really good. Yeah.
Yeah.
But if you think about it, it's related to fantasy.
Yeah.
So you should say that unicorns are fantastic.
Yeah.
Dragons are fantastic because they
Yeah.
are related to fantasy.
Yeah.
But it's changed its meaning. And
What about awesome?
awesome is a modern version. Yeah, that's another one. Because in the past we used to have awful.
Yeah.
Awful now is really bad.
Yeah.
But in the past it was really good. And it's been replaced now with awesome is the good version, and awful has become bad.
Yeah.
But about 300 years ago, awful was really good because it's full of awe.
Oh.
Awe, yeah, like
Oh.
awe. When you see something really amazing and you go, awe.
Oh.
It's A-W-E is awe, as in awe-inspiring. If you go and visit the Taj Mahal in India, you might say it's awe-inspiring.
I see.
Because it's very, very impressive.
Yeah, yeah.
We stood in awe, they say, when you met the king, Louis XIV. You would meet him and you would stand in awe because you'd just be amazed at the splendour and everything.
Yeah, yeah.
So awful has changed. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. And what about this false friend?
Yeah.
Sensible and sensitive.
Yeah. We say false friend for at least for Spanish speakers. It's a false friend.
Yeah.
There's lots of people in the world who are not don't know Spanish. Yes, it's another example of how words change their meaning over the years. And sometimes you have a word that appears in 2 languages, and a few hundred years ago they probably had the same meaning when they started. But each generation interprets it slightly differently to the previous generation. And over the course of several hundred years, it can have a very different meaning. And I think this is why we have things like false friends. Because sensible in English is not the same as sensible in Spanish, even though it looks exactly the same.
Yeah.
So the Spanish word is more like our word sensitive.
Yeah, that's what it is.
So let's explain what they mean then. So sensible is like serious, mature.
Responsible.
Yes, responsible. Yes, the opposite of silly and foolish.
Yeah.
Yeah. But sensitive is when it feels something a lot. Because I'm trying to think of different meanings of sensitive, because you can have sensitive skin.
Oh, yeah.
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 If you use a very strong soap, you can get a rash on your arm.
Yeah.
From having sensitive skin. Or sensitive people, they feel emotions a lot, don't they?
Yeah.
They cry when they watch films.
Yeah, and they're kind of caring as well, aren't they?
Very caring people.
Yeah.
Very sensitive. They have a lot of feeling for, and a lot
Empathy.
of empathy and compassion. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So they're sensitive people.
Very good.
Okay then, so I think that's all we have time for in today's discussion. Next week we'll be talking about, instead of reading, we'll be focusing on listening and what kind of films to watch, TV series, radio programs, and various ways of improving listening. Yeah?
All sorts.
All sorts, absolutely. All sorts of things to do with listening. So tune in next week. And don't forget, on Wednesday there'll be another grammar video going out. And hopefully some short stories soon.
Yeah.
Okay, see you next time then.
Okay, thank you.
Bye.
Bye.